Hey everyone, and welcome back to AI Paper Podcasts. Today we're diving deep into a paper that's really shaking things up in the world of AI human animation. It's called OmniHuman-1, Rethinking the Scaling Up of One-Stage Conditioned Human Animation Models. And this paper introduces OmniHuman, a model that's kind of pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible by tackling a challenge that's been a real roadblock in this field for a while, the data bottleneck.
Exactly. Generating realistic human animation, you need a ton of high-quality data, and that's always been a limiting factor. What's really cool about OmniHuman, though, is how it gets around that issue by basically embracing a whole mix of data sources, almost turning that limitation into a strength.
So why don't we give our listeners a quick summary of the paper's key insights just for the first minute or so?
Sounds good. So instead of just relying on those super clean data sets, which are hard to scale up, OmniHuman uses a technique called OmniConditions Training. And what that means is they're combining a bunch of different input signals during training, things like text, audio, and poses. And that lets the model learn from a much wider range of data.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. By using weaker conditions like text alongside those stronger ones like detailed poses, OmniHuman can actually pull insights from data that other models would just toss out. So not only does this make the training data set bigger, it also forces the model to learn more general ways of representing human movement.
And you can see it in the results. OmniHuman actually beats out those leading specialized models on a bunch of different metrics. It's really good at both portrait and body animation. So we're not just talking about like subtle facial expressions or simple gestures. This thing can generate full body, realistic human animation that's both expressive and you can control it too.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
And what's really impressive is that it does all of that with just one model. Unlike older methods that needed separate models for different animation tasks or types of input.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a model that's not only super capable, but also incredibly efficient. This opens up a ton of possibilities for real-time applications, interactive experiences, and ways to make content creation pipelines more scalable. It's a big step towards making high-quality human animation something everyone can access.
Now that we've got the big picture, let's dig into the technical details and really explore how this model works its magic. So the core of OmniHuman is a pre-trained Seaweed model, which is based on something called MMDIT, or Multi-modal Diffusion Transformer. And the starting model was trained on general text video pairs.
Right. Then they add in a causal 3D VAE that's a 3D variational autoencoder, and they use that to compress the video data into a smaller latent space that makes it easier for the AI to handle. Think of it like converting a huge video file into a zipped folder. You're keeping all the important info, but in a much smaller package. And for training, they use something called flow matching.
Okay, I can already see some of our viewers getting a little lost, so let's unpack that a bit. Flow matching helps the model basically denoise that compressed video representation. It's like taking a blurry image and using some fancy algorithms to sharpen it up. You're bringing back the details that were hidden before.
That's a great way to put it. And this is where that OmniConditions thing we talked about comes in. The researchers use a 3-stage post-training approach, where they gradually add in those text, audio, and pose conditions.
So how do they actually get those audio and pose conditions into the model?
Well, for audio, they use a Wave2Vec model. That extracts the key features from the audio signal. Then those features are compressed using an MLP, a multi-layer perceptron, and then they're fed into each block of the MMDIT through cross-attention. It's like whispering little instructions to the AI at every step, guiding it to focus on the little details in the audio and show those details in the animation.
Okay, what about pose conditions? How do those get in there?
For that, they use a pose guider. That encodes a sequence of pose heat maps, which are basically detailed maps of body positions. Those get turned into pose tokens. Then they're stacked with that compressed video representation we talked about earlier. And all of that is fed into the diffusion model.
So it's like giving the AI a blueprint for how the body should move frame by frame.
Yeah.
But it's also letting it learn from those other inputs like the text and audio to add that extra layer of expression and make the movement feel more natural.
Exactly. And one of the really smart things they did here is how they incorporate appearance conditions. From a reference image like a photo, they actually reuse the original DIT backbone to encode that reference image, and that lets the reference and video tokens interact through self-attention.
So they're basically telling the AI, hey, this is what the person looks like. and this is how they should be moving. So the model can create an animation that combines both appearance and movement cues.
Precisely. And to make sure the model can tell the difference between that still reference image and the moving video frames, they tweak the 3D rotational position embeddings, or 3D ROB for short. That helps the AI separate what's about appearance and what's about movement.
Ah, that's clever. So it doesn't accidentally try to animate the static parts of the reference image.
Yeah.
But to train something like this, you must need a ridiculous amount of data, right?
Oh, absolutely. And they didn't hold back on that front. They trained OmniHuman on a whopping 18.7 thousand hours of human-related video data. That's a lot of footage to learn from.
That's just mind-blowing. And they didn't just use one metric to check how well the model works, right? They tested it on all sorts of tasks, both portrait and body animation, using a bunch of different established metrics.
Yeah, they use things like FID and FVD, which basically measure how realistic and good the generated images and videos look. And then there's Quoline, which checks how well the generated stuff matches up with the input prompts. And for lip syncing, they used SyncC.
For those of us who aren't super deep into the technical side of AI evaluation, can you break down what those metrics actually tell us in a practical sense?
Sure. So basically, these metrics help us put numbers to how realistic, accurate, and synchronized the animations are. For example, FID tells you how close the generated images are to real images, and FVD does the same thing. But for videos, SyncC specifically looks at how well the lips move with the audio, which is super important for making dialogue in animation believable.
It sounds like they really covered all their bases when it came to evaluating the model. And I'm guessing the results were pretty impressive.
OmniHuman consistently did better than other leading models across all these different metrics. It showed that it can really generate high-quality animation that's both realistic and well-synced.
But it wasn't just about beating the other models, right? OmniHuman also brought something new in terms of flexibility and being able to adapt to different situations.
You got it. Previous methods often had trouble with different input sizes ratios or even body proportions. They might be awesome at animating one type of character, but totally fall apart when you give them something different. OmniHuman can handle a much wider range of these variations, all with one model.
And that adaptability all comes back to that OmniConditions training approach.
Yeah.
By learning from such a mixed bag of data, it gets a better general understanding of how humans move and look. So it's way more versatile than its predecessors.
Exactly. And to really understand how each part of this OmniConditions approach affects the overall performance, they did a series of ablation studies.
For those who might not know what that is, can you explain what an ablation study is, why it's important here?
Of course. So an ablation study is basically an experiment where you remove or change specific parts of the model or the training process to see what happens to the overall performance. It's like taking apart a machine to figure out how each little piece contributes to making it work.
So in OmniHuman's case, they were trying to figure out how messing with the balance of different input conditions during training would affect the quality of the animation.
Right, and those studies actually revealed some interesting stuff. For instance, they found that relying too much on strong conditions like the detailed pose data could actually be a bad thing.
That seems a bit counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to give the model as much accurate information as possible?
You'd think so. But it turns out that overdoing it with the really specific data can lead to what we call overfitting. The model gets so focused on copying the exact patterns in the training data that it loses the ability to handle new situations or come up with new movements.
So it's kind of like teaching someone to dance by showing them one very specific routine. They might be able to nail that routine, but they won't be able to freestyle or adapt to a different beat.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And it's the same with AI models. The Ablation Studies showed that having a good mix of data, including those weaker text conditions, was key to getting both accuracy and expressiveness in the animation.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot, that perfect balance between strong and weak conditions. That way the model can learn the rules of human movement without becoming too stiff or repetitive.
Precisely. And these ablation studies also showed how important the reference image ratio is, especially when you're trying to generate longer video sequences.
Right, because that reference image gives the AI important info about what the subject looks like in the background context.
Exactly. And they found that using higher reference image ratios gave them more consistent and detailed results, particularly over longer periods.
So it's kind of like giving the AI a strong visual anchor so it doesn't drift away from the intended style or introduce weird artifacts as the animation goes on.
That's it. With lower ratios, the model tended to lose those finer details, and you'd get things like the background colors shifting or inconsistencies in how the character looks.
So it seems like if you want to make high-quality, long-form human animation with AI, You have to be really careful about not only the data you use for training, but also the balance of those different input conditions and how they're integrated into the model's architecture.
Absolutely. And while all those quantitative metrics and ablation studies give us valuable insights into how the model performs, sometimes the best way to really appreciate what it can do is to just see it in action.
And that's where those extended visual results in the paper come in. They really show off what OmniHuman can do in a bunch of different scenarios, going beyond those standard benchmarks to demonstrate its versatility.
Yeah, those examples really highlight all the possibilities that OmniHuman opens up. You see everything from stylized human-like characters to 2D cartoon figures, even non-human images that are animated in a surprisingly human-like way.
I was really blown away by the examples of object interaction. The way those animated figures could sing while playing instruments or make natural gestures while holding objects was just amazing.
It really shows how well the model can learn those complex relationships between human movement, object manipulation, and the surrounding environment.
And remember, this is all with one model. That level of versatility and adaptability is truly remarkable.
It is. And while the researchers mainly focused on the technical aspects of the model in this paper, we can't forget about the bigger implications of this work.
Right. This isn't just about pushing the limits of what's technically possible. It's about creating new avenues for creative expression, interactive storytelling, and immersive experiences across a whole range of applications. Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive into OmniHuman, let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture here. What are some of the ways this technology could be used, and how could it change different industries?
Oh, the possibilities are really huge. I mean, imagine a world where making high-quality human animation is as easy as writing some text or recording your voice. That's the kind of future OmniHuman is hinting at.
It's pretty wild to think about how this could totally revolutionize things like gaming and filmmaking. Imagine creating lifelike characters and scenes without needing those expensive motion capture studios or spending hours on manual animation.
Exactly. Game developers could fill their virtual worlds with characters that feel real and react to what the player does in real time. And filmmakers could direct virtual actors with so much more control over their movements and expressions. It would really lower the bar for getting into those fields and empower both individual creators and smaller studios.
And it goes way beyond just entertainment. We could see this being used for things like virtual reality training and simulations. Imagine healthcare professionals being able to practice complex procedures in a safe and immersive virtual world, or architects and engineers designing and testing their creations before actually building them in the real world.
Absolutely. And we can't forget about the impact on accessibility. Think about people with disabilities. They could use voice commands or gestures to animate their own virtual avatars, giving them a way to express themselves and participate in digital spaces in ways that just weren't possible before.
This research really does open up a whole new world of possibilities for how we interact with computers and express ourselves creatively. It's a great example of how powerful AI can be and how creative the researchers are who are pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve.
You know, one thing that really struck me about this paper is how it challenges some of the traditional thinking in AI development. For a long time, the focus has been on getting these perfectly curated data sets with the idea that cleaner data means better models. But OmniHuman shows that actually embracing a mix of data sources can be a real advantage.
It's like that saying, variety is the spice of life, right? In this case, having a bit of messiness in the data actually forces the model to learn more robust and generalized representations of how humans move and look.
Exactly. It reminds us that we shouldn't be afraid to think outside the box and try different approaches in AI research. Sometimes the most groundbreaking innovations come from questioning those old assumptions and being more inclusive in our perspective.
So to wrap it all up, OmniHuman is a major step forward in AI-human animation. It's a versatile and powerful model that uses this clever combination of data and training techniques to generate human movement that's high-quality, realistic, and full of expression.
And beyond all the technical achievements, OmniHuman gives us a glimpse into a future where creating and experiencing human animation is more accessible and engaging than ever. It's a really exciting time to be working in this field, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what new innovations come out in the next few years.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into OmniHuman. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little inspiring. As always, we encourage you to check out the full research paper and dig deeper into the technical details. We'll catch you next time on AI Paper Podcasts, where we'll continue to explore the cutting edge of AI research and how it's shaping the world.